They tried to conquer it for 2,000 years. They never fully succeeded.
In the far north of Britain lies a land of mountains, lochs, and storms, a place so fierce that even the mighty Roman Empire could not hold it. The Romans called the tribes here Caledonians, and after repeated attempts to conquer them, Rome eventually gave up and built a wall instead, just to keep them out. That defiance would become the defining thread of an entire nation's story. Clans would rise and feud. Kings would be crowned and murdered. Armies would clash for independence again and again for centuries. This is the entire history of Scotland. Before Scotland was Scotland, it was home to several distinct peoples. The Picts, known for their mysterious carved stones, dominated the north and east. The Scots, originally Gaelic-speaking settlers from Ireland, established the Kingdom of Dalriada in the west. Britons and Angles held territory in the south. For centuries, these groups fought, allied, and intermarried. Then, around 843 A.D., a Scottish king named Kenneth MacAlpin united the Picts and the Scots into a single kingdom, Alba. It was the first time these lands had been unified under one crown, and it laid the foundation for the nation that would follow. The early Scottish kingdom was anything but stable. Succession was violent and unpredictable, with rival claimants frequently murdering their way to the throne. The most famous of these struggles involved a real 11th century king named Macbeth, who took the throne after defeating his predecessor in battle in 1040. A far more conventional path to power than the version later immortalized in literature. Macbeth ruled for 17 years before being killed by Malcolm, son of the king he had replaced. Under Malcolm III and his successors, the Scottish crown gradually strengthened its grip, building castles, founding abbeys, and slowly knitting the kingdom's regions together under royal authority. In 1296, everything changed. King Edward I of England, later remembered in Scotland as the Hammer, invaded, deposed the Scottish king, and declared himself overlord of Scotland. He removed the Stone of Destiny, the ancient coronation stone of Scottish kings, and took it to Westminster. Scottish resistance erupted almost immediately. A knight named William Wallace led a rebel army to a stunning victory over English forces at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. It was a humiliating defeat for Edward's forces and ignited a war for independence that would last for decades. William Wallace was eventually captured and executed in 1305, but the fight for independence did not die with him. A nobleman named Robert the Bruce had himself crowned King of Scotland in 1306, beginning years of guerrilla warfare against English occupation. The decisive moment came in 1314 at the Battle of Bannockburn, where Robert's forces, though significantly outnumbered, won a crushing victory over the army of Edward II. It was one of the most significant battles in Scottish history. Scottish independence was not yet fully secured, but Bannockburn proved decisively that Scotland could not simply be conquered. In 1320, Scottish nobles sent a remarkable letter to the Pope, the Declaration of Arbroath, asserting Scotland's right to defend its independence and famously declaring that they would never submit to English rule, for we fight not for glory, nor riches, nor honors, but for freedom alone. It remains one of the most significant documents in Scottish history. Finally, in 1328, England formally recognized Scottish independence through the Treaty of Edinburgh and Northampton. Robert the Bruce died the following year, having lived just long enough to see the cause he had fought for entire life formally secured. Beyond the wars and royal courts, much of Scotland, particularly the Highlands, operated under an entirely different system: the clan. A clan was an extended kinship network led by a chief, bound together by loyalty, shared land, and often a shared belief in common ancestry. Clans such as MacDonald, Campbell, MacGregor, and Stewart controlled vast territories and could field private armies. Clan rivalries sometimes erupted into deadly feuds lasting generations. The clan system created a society distinct from the rest of Britain, one organized around kinship and tradition rather than centralized feudal control, and it would persist for centuries, shaping Highland identity long after the rest of Scotland had modernized. In 1603, Scotland's King James VI inherited the English throne as well, becoming James I of England, uniting the two crowns under a single monarch, though the kingdoms remained legally separate. Tensions simmered for the next century. Then, in 1707, facing financial crisis after a disastrous colonial venture, the Scottish Parliament voted to merge with England's, creating the Kingdom of Great Britain. The decision remains controversial to this day. Supporters argued it brought economic stability and access to England's growing empire. Critics saw it as the loss of Scottish sovereignty, achieved partly through bribery and economic pressure. Either way, Scotland's independent parliament would not meet again for nearly 300 years. Not everyone accepted the new order. Supporters of the exiled Stuart royal family, known as Jacobites, launched a series of uprisings throughout the early 18th century, hoping to restore a Stuart king to the throne. The most famous rising came in 1745, led by Charles Edward Stuart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, who landed in Scotland and rallied Highland clans to his cause. His army marched deep into England before retreating. The rebellion ended decisively at the Battle of Culloden in 1746, the last major battle fought on British soil, where government forces crushed the Jacobite army in under an hour. The brutal aftermath that followed would change the Highlands forever. In the decades following Culloden, the traditional clan system was deliberately dismantled. Highland chiefs, now reimagined as commercial landlords, forced tens of thousands of tenants off their ancestral land during what became known as the Highland clearances, making way for more profitable sheep farming. Many displaced Highlanders emigrated to North America and beyond. Yet this same era also saw Scotland become a global center of ideas. The Scottish Enlightenment produced thinkers like Adam Smith and David Hume, who reshaped economics and philosophy. Meanwhile, cities like Glasgow grew into industrial powerhouses, driving shipbuilding and engineering across the British Empire. For most of the 20th century, Scotland was governed entirely from Westminster. That began to change in 1999, when a devolved Scottish Parliament reopened in Edinburgh for the first time in nearly 300 years, gaining control over areas like health, education, and justice while remaining part of the United Kingdom. The question of full independence resurfaced powerfully in 2014, when Scotland held a referendum on leaving the UK entirely. Voters chose to remain, by a margin of 55 to 45%, but the debate never truly settled. Today, in 2026, Scotland remains a nation defined by an old and unresolved question. How much of its destiny should it govern alone, and how much should it share? Picts and Scots, kings and clans, wars for freedom, fought and won, and a union entered, debated still. Scotland has been conquered, divided, cleared, and reshaped, and yet it has never lost its sense of itself. Its mountains, its tartans, its language, and its unmistakable defiance remain woven into everything it has become. The story of Scotland is not finished. It is still being written one vote, one generation, one Highland Glen at a time. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it, because some nations never stop fighting for their own story. This has been the entire history of Scotland. Thank you for watching.